parcel of information that they want exposed, but they want to control that exposure, and at the same time be able to put a control on people that they think or they believe represent terrorists. And so you've got a lot going on here, and people don't realize it. Say, oh, gee, Glenn Beck and O'Reilly and Hannity and Limbaugh, they're saying, yeah, there's bad guys out there, and they're hiding everywhere. And what they've done is stolen the message.
I think it's so interesting. It was just last night on 60 Minutes, Leslie Stahl did a session on assault weapons and on the gun shows and how so many people are buying up guns today. And if we could just disarm the people, we would stop all of the shootings, on the college campuses. Well, of course, a lot of the violence actually comes from people who actually have been a part of CIA mind control. Anybody who doubts that needs to go into the background of Ted Kaczynski, who joined a CIA mind control program when he was at Harvard University, and they destroyed his whole mind, his psyche, and then we end up with the Unabomber. And he's a perfect example. We used to carry the book. It's still available, I'm sure, out there, on Ted Kaczynski, and his mind was destroyed by a CIA mind control program. How many of the other people that we have? We saw this fellow at Virginia Tech recently commit terrible things. If anybody had had a gun there, they could have stopped him. But, of course, we've made every one of our schools and universities a shooting gallery because, of course, we've made it a federal crime for anybody but the criminals and the murderers to have guns there. Wouldn't it be logical if people could defend themselves from psychopaths? Certainly the police wouldn't go in there. They weren't going to go in and take a chance on getting shot. Well, if somebody had been there with a gun, they could have put this whole thing down. They weren't allowed to. It's against the law. Everything the government is doing is to make things worse. They authorized all of these psychotropic drugs, which the young man at Virginia Tech was on, that make people homicidal and suicidal. And they know that the drugs make them homicidal and suicidal. So why are they allowing these drugs to be administered here in the United States? Well, you go right ahead, Bob, but because this whole thing is, there's a massive program for gun control and gun registration. Certainly, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who, when she was the mayor of San Francisco, insisted on having a gun permit so she could carry a gun, but she wants to disarm all the rest of the people. She gives hypocrisy a bad name. Isn't it amazing Leslie Stahl didn't ask that question of her when she was advocating gun control, on yesterday's 60-Minute program? Isn't it a shame that they didn't give people a chance to talk and say the reason that they want to have weapons is because that's how you keep government from establishing a dictatorship? And there are many people who are concerned that Barack Obama has already said he wants to have a civilian police force, federal police force, that is, better armed than our military, as well armed as our military. What a frightening thing. That sounds just like the SS. That's why people are out there buying guns, because they're afraid of government. But now, once did Leslie Stahl allow any of that thought to be expressed on the 60-Minute program? But you go right ahead, Bob.
Well, you're correct, and she couldn't help but sit there and gloat. And you could see it written all over her face. But they have contempt for us people who believe in the Constitution and God and all those kind of things. And it's what you expect. You must expect on media that is totally controlled by the enemy.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we can give you an example of that after over 60 Minutes, where they will delete things. For instance, repeat programs where somebody made a real good point, and it may have gone out the first time correctly, and then, of course, when it comes around again, they delete the important points that people say, because they don't want people to understand. They want to mold our minds and create our tastes and form our ideas, and they do that so effectively by programs like 60 Minutes, which is why I watch them. I want to know what the enemy are doing to manipulate the reality of the American people. Well, anyway, as far as what's going on economically, Bob, what about the corporate reports? Aren't the corporate reports, earnings reports, going to be out here shortly? And what are they going to show?
Well, they're on their way, and they're going to be probably, I've got it in this next issue, but they came in for the S&P 500, I don't know, 6 months ago at $90. Now they're looking at $28. And
the value of the S&P 500?
The value of the earnings.
Okay, I see, okay.
And that's a devastating change. And
well, because what that really does, of course, is make the price-earnings ratio really very, very high. In other words, makes the stock price-earnings ratio should be 8 to 10, or really that's a good buy. What is it, up to 25 or 30? Where is it right now?
I hate to tell you this, but it's 100.
Really? Well, that means, of course,
yeah.
the stocks eventually are going to collapse, down, what, to 3,000-4,000?
Yeah, 4,000, I think, if we're lucky. What they've done here is they're playing this financial card. Everybody in the street knew about it, and so they all hopped on the wagon. And when they've got that going because of all these bad earnings that have come out over the next month, and they start about next week. And so you have two offsetting factors here, and they're hoping that the market can hold up at these levels in spite of the dreadful news that's coming out by manipulating the financials. I had one of my sources in New York tell me that what the financial companies did was they, in their own firms as well as in other firms, and in conjunction with one another, they went to the people who had legally shorted stocks but had borrowed securities to do that. And when you short a stock, you don't have it, but you're selling it. So you're going to borrow that stock someplace. Brokerage firms lend that stock to you, and they charge you for that. Anyway, they called in as much of the collateralizing shares in their own companies and companies of, quote, their friends. And that's how the market and the financials started running back up again. We got word of this about 3 years ago, and I closed out all our shorts, which were Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, and J.P. Morgan Chase. And we had been short, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80% higher. But anyway, we closed them out because we knew what they were doing. And of course this is illegal, but it doesn't make any difference. Where is the SEC? Hiding as usual. I mean, the SEC only pursue small companies, small brokers, and newsletter writers.
Hold that thought. We're going to be back here in just a moment with Bob Chapman here at the Radio Liberty Network. Bob, you go right ahead.
And so there's no regulation for the rich and powerful, the wealthy on Wall Street who keep on stealing from it, and the banks, of course, as well. So that's what they've done, and that's how they've got the rally going. Now all the bad news is going to come out, and the good news that was created in these financial companies is supposed to be able to neutralize that. I don't think that's going to work because I think a good deal of the gains in the financials are over. In fact, I think the market should start topping out this week. And, it's come from 6,600 on the Dow to 8,000. That's a 25 or so % increase in the period of about 3 weeks. And so I think it's over. We might go sideways for a month, but and maybe slightly lower, but all of a sudden it'll break down. There won't be a summer rally, and this is it. And 6,600 will be tested again. And I think in the fall, I think it'll probably go down to anywhere between 4,500 and 6,000. It's hard to tell where, but conservatively, we'll say 5,500 to 6,000. And that's not going to be good because all the pension and profit sharing plans of states, cities, municipalities, counties, whatever, and in all of the pension plans, which are already off in the last 20 months, somewhere around 60%. And, they're in serious trouble. And if the market goes down to that 5,500, 6,000 level on the Dow, then a lot of them are not going to be able to pay the full amount of their pensions. Now, there is the Pension Bet Guarantee Corporation, but they're broke.